Dr. Marcus Webb stood before the holographic display, his hands trembling slightly as he absorbed the data streaming across the screen. The numbers were undeniable, terrifying in their precision. Every calculation pointed to the same conclusion: the galaxy had approximately 14 months before complete annihilation. "You finally understand," Arkan Telkrin said from behind him, his crystalline voice carrying the weight of 10,000 years. The Valyrian scientist moved with the grace of a being who had witnessed civilizations rise and fall like waves upon a shore. "The dark matter cascade cannot be stopped. We have verified this through every known physical framework." Marcus turned to face the ancient alien. Telkrin's translucent body shimmered with bioluminescent patterns, each pulse representing complex thoughts that moved faster than human neurons could fire. The Valorian's three eyes held something Marcus recognized despite their alien nature: resignation. "There has to be a solution," Marcus insisted, pulling up his own calculations. "If we redirect gravitational fields, or create a controlled collapse." "Impossible." Telkrin's voice held no malice, only the certainty of mathematics. "Your species has existed for mere thousands of years. The Valyrian hegemony has studied physics for epochs. Every scenario has been modeled. Every possibility has been explored. The dark matter storm will consume everything, and no force in this universe can prevent it." The door to the observatory slid open, and engineer Yuki Tanaka entered, her boots clicking against the metal floor. Her dark eyes swept across the grim scene, taking in Marcus's defeated posture and Telkrin's calm acceptance. "The council meeting just ended," Yuki announced, her voice tight. "Humanity voted to proceed with Project Threshold." Telkrin's body flickered with what might have been surprise. "Project Threshold? We analyzed your proposal. The energy requirements exceed the total output of every star in 3 galactic arms. The structural integrity needed would require materials that violate known atomic bonding limits. The quantum coherence across such distances defies everything we know," Yuki interrupted, a slight smile on her lips. "Yes, we read your report. All 47,000 pages of it." Marcus straightened, feeling something rekindle in his chest. "Arkan Telkrin, you're right that it's impossible according to current understanding. But humanity has a history of not knowing what we can't do until after we've done it." Telkrin's bioluminescence shifted to deep violet, the Valyrian equivalent of pity. "Dr. Webb, we have watched species like yours before. Optimism is admirable, but physics is absolute. Your threshold lattice would need to span the entire galaxy, generating a coherent field that simultaneously exists in multiple quantum states while maintaining structural integrity against forces that would tear apart neutron stars." "We know," Yuki said simply. She activated her own datapad, displaying the preliminary construction schematics. "We start building next week." The Valyrian scientist studied the humans before him, these strange creatures who faced mathematical certainty with stubborn hope. In all his millennia of existence, he had never encountered anything quite like them. Beings who would challenge the universe itself rather than accept inevitable doom. "When your project fails," Telkrin said quietly, "and it will fail, your species will have wasted its final months pursuing fantasy instead of accepting peace." Marcus met his gaze steadily. "Maybe. Or maybe we'll find that peace isn't the only way to face the end." He turned back to the display, already running new calculations. "Either way, we're not going quietly into oblivion." Telkrin watched them work for a moment longer, then departed in silence. Behind him, the two humans bent over their impossible mathematics, sketching out plans for a structure that could not, exist. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out. On Valyrian worlds, citizens gathered in great halls to share poetry and philosophy, preparing their souls for the approaching darkness. They had calculated their end with perfect precision, and they would meet it with dignity. But on human colonies, construction crews were already mobilizing, gathering resources, and beginning the first phases of something unprecedented. They didn't have Valyrian certainty or elder wisdom. What they had was something the ancient races had forgotten: the reckless audacity to attempt the absolutely impossible. The dark matter storm continued its inexorable approach, indifferent to hope or despair. In 14 months, it would reach the galactic edge. And there, it would encounter either empty space or humanity's greatest folly. Time would tell which. Captain James Fletcher floated in zero gravity, watching the construction drones swarm around the primary junction like metallic bees. Through the viewport of his command shuttle, he could see the skeletal framework of Section 447 taking shape, just one of the 100,000 sections that would eventually form the threshold lattice. "Captain, We're 3 days behind schedule on the Western Arm, his second officer reported through the comm. The resonance crystals keep fracturing during installation. James rubbed his temples. 3 days behind on a project that shouldn't exist in the first place. Tell engineering to reduce the harmonic frequency by 0.03%. If that doesn't work, we'll try synthetic substitutes. Synthetic substitutes haven't been tested. Nothing about this has been tested, James cut in, his voice wary but firm. We're building instructions for something that violates half the known laws of thermodynamics. At this point, untested is our baseline. A private channel opened, and Councillor Vren's face appeared on the secondary screen. The Valerian diplomat's crystalline features held their usual expression of concerned disapproval. Over the past 6 months, Vren had become a regular observer of humanity's folly, as he called it. Captain Fletcher, I bring news from the hegemony core worlds, Vren said, his voice carrying harmonics that human ears could barely detect. The Council of Whispers has entered permanent meditation. They have accepted the end with grace. James turned from the viewport. With all respect, Counselor, we're not interested in acceptance right now. We're kind of busy building. Building toward failure. Vren's 3 eyes blinked in sequence. Your Dr. Osei's quantum calculations are fascinating, truly. But Captain, even she cannot explain how your lattice will achieve coherence across 87,000 light-years. The quantum decoherence alone will be solved when Dr. Osei solves it, James interrupted. She's got another 7 months. Vren's bioluminescence shifted to a soft amber, sadness mixed with frustration. Captain, the Valerian Empire stands at the edge of dissolution. Not from the storm, but from loss of purpose. When beings of pure logic calculate their inevitable end, what reason remains to continue? Our greatest cities are emptying. Our people are choosing to end on their own terms rather than wait for the darkness. The words hung heavy in the void between them. James had seen the reports, entire Valerian worlds going silent, their populations simply stopping. No violence, no chaos. Just elegant, calculated surrender. I'm sorry for your people, James said quietly. But we're not wired that way. Yes, I have noticed. Vren gestured to something off-screen. I have also noticed your construction crews working 20-hour shifts. I have seen your supply ships pushing engines beyond safe limits. I have watched your engineers argue for hours over problems that may not even have solutions. Tell me, Captain, what do you see when you look at your impossible structure? James turned back to the viewport. The lattice stretched into the distance, a web of glowing energy conduits and impossible geometry. Thousands of human workers in pressure suits crawled across its surface like ants building a monument to their own stubborn pride. I see people who refuse to quit, James said. Even when they should. Down in the engineering bay of Construction Platform 7, Dr. Amora Osei was having her 15th argument of the day. This one was with the laws of quantum mechanics themselves. The entanglement should collapse at this distance, she muttered, running the simulation for the 1,000th time. Every calculation says it should collapse. So why does my experimental data show stability? Her assistant, a young physicist named Robert Chen, peered over her shoulder. Maybe your instruments are broken? I've checked them 40 times. Amora pulled up another data stream. Rob, what if the Valorians are wrong? Not about the math, their math is perfect. But what if there's something they're not accounting for? Like what? A fundamental force we don't know about. Like chaos. Amora spun her chair around, her eyes bright with exhaustion and excitement. The Valorians build everything on perfect order, perfect calculations, perfect predictability. But quantum mechanics has inherent randomness. What if that randomness, at a massive enough scale, creates its own kind of order? Rob frowned. That's not how physics works. According to Valerian physics. According to 10,000 years of their research and their models and their perfect understanding. Amora stood up, pacing in the cramped bay. But Rob, they also said faster-than-light travel was impossible until we figured out the Alcubierre modification. They said controlled fusion at room temperature was impossible until we developed quantum catalyst chambers. Every time they say impossible, we eventually find a way around it. Or we get lucky. Maybe luck is just another word for trying things no rational being would attempt. A station-wide alert interrupted their discussion. On every screen, the same message appeared: dark matter storm progression, 8 months to galactic periphery. Amora and Rob exchanged glances. 8 months. The threshold lattice was only 60% complete, and they still hadn't solved the fundamental problem of how to power it. "We should get back to work," Rob said quietly. "Yeah," Amora agreed. But as she turned back to her console, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were missing something obvious. Some piece of the puzzle that the Valorians, in all their ancient wisdom, had overlooked simply because it was too illogical to consider. Across the galaxy, humanity worked. They welded impossible joints and calibrated equipment that shouldn't function. They ran calculations that made Valian scientists weep with frustration and transported materials across distances that defied logistical sense. And every day, more Valian worlds went dark. Not from the storm, that was still months away. But from the weight of certainty, from the burden of knowing the exact moment their universe would end. Counselor Vren watched it all from his observation post. He had been assigned to document humanity's failure for the historical archives, assuming anyone would survive to read them. But somewhere in the past months, his mission had changed. Now he watched not to document failure, but to understand something his people had lost. The humans knew they were going to fail. Their own scientists had verified the Valian calculations. But they built anyway, laughed anyway, hoped anyway. Vren didn't understand it. But he was beginning to envy it. In his command shuttle, Captain James Fletcher received another status report. More delays, more impossible problems, more reasons why the lattice couldn't possibly work. He filed them all away and sent the same message he sent every day to every construction team: keep building. Because that's what humans did. Even when the Empire burned around them, even when ancient races screamed impossible, even when the universe itself seemed determined to prove them wrong. They built anyway. Director Sofia Ramos stood in the central operations hub, surrounded by holographic displays that showed every section of the threshold lattice. Her gray hair was tied back hastily, and dark circles shadowed her eyes. She hadn't slept in 48 hours. None of them had. The dark matter storm would reach the galactic edge in 72 hours. Final diagnostics are complete, reported technician David Park from his station. His hands moved across the holographic interface with practiced precision. All 100,000 sections are synchronized. Power conduits are stable. Quantum nodes are, he hesitated, well, they're doing something we don't have words for. Functioning or not functioning? Sophia asked. Both. Neither. It's like they're waiting for something. High Chancellor Morthax materialized via holographic projection, his ancient Valian form flickering with colors that human eyes struggled to interpret. Behind him, Sophia could see the empty chambers of what had once been the hegemony's grand capital. Most Valorians had chosen to end their existence peacefully rather than face the storm. Director Ramos, Morthax's voice carried the weight of finality. I come to offer you and your people sanctuary in our transcendence chambers. When the storm arrives, you need not suffer. We can grant you the same peaceful transition we have given ourselves. Sophia looked at the ancient being, this representative of a civilization that had ruled the galaxy for millennia, now reduced to offering dignified suicide as their final gift. Thank you, Chancellor, but we're going to see this through. To what end? Morthax's form pulsed with deep crimson, Valian frustration. Your lattice is complete, yet you still have no power source capable of activating it. The energy required would drain every star in the galaxy simultaneously. You have built a magnificent monument to impossibility, but it remains just that, a monument. He wasn't wrong. That had been their final, insurmountable problem. The threshold lattice needed more power than existed in accessible reality. Every human scientist had verified it. Even their most optimistic calculations fell short by several orders of magnitude. We'll figure something out, Sophia said, though even she could hear the hollowness in her voice. Morthax's colors shifted to violet, pity. I have lived for 14,000 years, Director. I have seen countless species face extinction. The noble ones are those who accept it with grace. Please, do not let your final hours be spent in desperation. The hologram flickered out, leaving Sophia alone with her thoughts and the soft hum of machinery that powered a device with no purpose. David Park broke the silence. Director, I've been thinking about something Dr. Osei said before the accident. 3 weeks ago, Dr. Amora Osei had died when an experimental quantum chamber had collapsed. Her last words, spoken to David, had been about chaos and order. About how randomness at scale might create unexpected patterns. She said the Valorians were missing something, David continued, pulling up streams of data. They calculate everything based on closed systems, on perfect information, on controllable variables. But Director, the universe isn't a closed system. It's messy. It's random. It's chaotic, Sophia finished. She moved closer to his station, her exhaustion momentarily forgotten. What are you thinking? David's fingers flew across the interface. The lattice doesn't need a power source we control. What if it needs a power source we can't control? The storm itself, it's pure, uncontrolled dark matter energy cascading across space. What if we don't fight it? What if we channel it? That's insane. The storm would tear the lattice apart. According to Velian physics, yes. According to their perfect, ordered understanding of how energy flows. David pulled up Amora's final research notes. But she found something. Look, quantum instability at massive scales doesn't increase linearly. At a certain point, it creates self-organizing patterns. Patterns that shouldn't exist but do. Sophia stared at the data, her mind racing. You're talking about using the most destructive force in the galaxy as a power source for an impossible machine. I'm talking about the only thing we haven't tried. David met her eyes. Because no logical, rational species would ever try it. Captain James Fletcher's voice crackled over the comm. Director, we have visual on the storm front. Director, it's beyond anything we imagined. Sophia pulled up the external feeds. The dark matter cascade filled the view screens like an approaching wall of absolute darkness. It wasn't just black, it was the absence of everything. Space itself seemed to tear and scream as the storm advanced. Every rational instinct told her to evacuate. To accept Morthax's offer. To face the end with dignity rather than in a desperate, illogical gamble. But Sophia hadn't spent the last year building the impossible just to give up at the final moment. David, how long to reconfigure the lattice to channel incoming energy instead of generating it? I don't know. 30 minutes? Maybe less. You have 20. Do it. Her command staff stared at her in shock. Director, one officer protested, this isn't approved. We haven't run any simulations. There's no time for simulations. Sophia's voice cut through the hub like a blade. Every simulation we've run for the past year said this wouldn't work anyway. We're past logic now. We're past reason. We're down to pure, stubborn human instinct. She opened a channel to all stations. All personnel, this is Director Ramos. In approximately 15 minutes, we're going to attempt something that will either save the galaxy or accomplish absolutely nothing. Either way, it's been an honor working with you all. Ramos out. David's hands moved faster than thought, rewriting quantum protocols that had taken months to develop. Other technicians joined him, not fully understanding but trusting in the desperate mathematics of the moment. The storm grew closer. On Valian worlds, the few remaining observers watched with detached curiosity, ready to witness the final proof of humanity's foolishness. Reconfiguration complete, David announced. Director, I have no idea if this will work. The math is, it's not even math anymore. It's a guess. The best kind, Sophia said. She placed her hand on the activation console. On my mark. 3, 2, 1. Mark. The threshold lattice came alive. And everything changed. The lattice didn't fight the storm. It embraced it, pulling the chaotic dark matter energy into its impossible geometry. The energy that should have destroyed it instead began to flow through the quantum nodes, finding paths that shouldn't exist, creating coherence from chaos. David watched his screens in disbelief. It's working. Director, it's actually working. The lattice is, it's organizing the storm. Converting dark matter into stable quantum fields. This is impossible. Stop saying that word, Sophia breathed, watching as the galaxy-spanning structure blazed with captured energy. The dark matter storm hit the lattice full force, and stopped. Not destroyed, but transformed. The chaotic energy became structured, flowing through channels of human-made impossibility until it emerged on the other side as harmless radiation that dispersed into space. On his observation platform, High Chancellor Morthax watched in stunned silence. His perfect calculations, his ancient understanding, his millennia of wisdom, all of it had been wrong. Not because the mathematics was incorrect, but because the Valorians had forgotten something fundamental. Sometimes the universe rewards those who don't know they should fail. Captain Fletcher's voice came through, shaking with emotion. Director, we're reading energy stabilization across all sections. The storm is, it's passing through us. We did it. By every god humans ever invented, we actually did it. Sophia sank into her chair, laughter and tears mixing together. Around her, the operations hub erupted in celebration. People who had worked impossible hours on an impossible project, who had been mocked and pitted by an ancient empire, who had built something that violated every known law simply because they didn't know how to quit. They had saved the galaxy. Morthax's hologram reappeared, but the ancient chancellor looked different somehow. Smaller. More uncertain. Director Ramos, he said quietly, I do not understand what you have done. Our greatest minds spent months calculating why your solution could not work. Yet it works. Maybe that's the problem, Chancellor. Sophia wiped her eyes. You calculated why it couldn't work. We just built it anyway. But how? What did we miss? Sophia thought of Dr. Amora Osei, who died chasing an illogical hunch. Of David Park, who suggested the insane solution at the final hour. Of Captain Fletcher and Engineer Tanaka and Dr. Webb and thousands of others who built when building made no sense. You didn't miss anything, Chancellor. You just forgot what it's like to be wrong. To fail. To try things that shouldn't work. She smiled. The Valorians became so good at being right that you lost the ability to be stupidly, recklessly, impossibly hopeful. Across the galaxy, the threshold lattice continued to glow, a monument to human stubbornness that had become the galaxy's salvation. The dark matter storm passed through it like water through a filter, emerging harmless on the other side. The ancient Vailian Empire had screamed impossible even as it burned. And humanity had built the unbuildable anyway. Not because they were smarter, or more advanced, or more powerful. But because they had never learned when to stop trying.